So to start with, we got 3 new Macs. We got the new MacBook Air, powered by the M2, now with a 15.3-inch screen. If you like the MacBook Air, there's a bigger one. Got an update to the Mac Studio. It's now available with the M2 Max and the new M2 Ultra chip. Mostly a spec bump update, but good to see getting regular releases. And the much fretted over Mac Pro. It's available with either the same M2 Max or M2 Ultra, and it also has PCIe slots. So that's for storage expansion, networking, audio interfaces. Unfortunately, no graphics cards. We still don't have graphics expansion for Apple Silicon yet, maybe one day. So on to what are some of the consumer-facing features. For watchOS, we got a bit of a redesign. So this includes widgets on the home screen, some improvements to some of the workouts, like the hiking view now supports elevation and pinning. Last time you got a mobile reception, improvements to the cycling workout, and now the Breathe app also supports mental health tracking. iOS, quite a lot of quality of life improvements. Bump is back. You can now share contacts by just bringing 2 phones together. Custom call wallpapers for when you're calling someone. The much rumoured journaling app was finally shorn off. Autocorrect is now improved and is specifically will learn to swear for you. That's going to be particularly popular in Australia. Messages got a bit of a redesign. There's now a new standby mode for when your iPhone is horizontal and charging. That's going to show off some new widgets. And these are just using the existing widgets the developers have already created, just scaled up a bit. Your phone will also now pick up missed calls and pretend to be your voicemail for you and then give you a live transcription as it's happening. Personally, very excited about this one, given that I get multiple calls a day from people claiming to be the Chinese embassy, telling me my visa has expired. Never even set foot in China. iPadOS, I think a bit of a theme for this one was kind of bringing a lot of features that everyone was waiting for. So now we've got lock screen widgets and lots of them. Improved PDF markup, the Health app has finally come to iPadOS as well, and big improvements to Stage Manager. You can now pretty much freely resize and position windows and they'll stay where you leave them. Been trying it out and it's much improved. macOS Sonoma, bit of a quiet year for kind of Mac first features. We did get some new video conferencing stuff, so you can now get like a webcam overlay when you're sharing a screen. And widgets have now been brought to your macOS desktop. So these don't even have to be from apps installed on your Mac. It will actually stream the archives from your phone. They also support the new interactivity based on app intents. So what's new in Swift? This is some of the more exciting stuff because unlike the new version features where we're potentially years away from getting to use them, we pretty much get to use the Swift stuff day one. So the big one is going to be Swift macros. These now allow you to write Swift code that's going to generate more different other Swift code. They're different to something like the macro support in something like the C preprocessor, where it's kind of doing string replacement. These macros run on your fully type-checked, symbolicated code. Does mean they're a bit more complicated to write, but the power of that is that now you get to introspect the structure of your code and get to generate things that are fully type-checked as you're writing them. Because they're just generating regular old Swift code as well, there's tools in Xcode so that you can see the macros as they're generated, you can step into them with a debugger, and because they're also just generating Swift code, it's also impossible to hide the implementation details. So this means even if you're using some closed source library, like most of Apple's frameworks, you can actually see the code that it's going to generate and how it's actually working. We also get parameter packs for all your functional programming goodness. What these allow is for variadic generics. Previously, there was no way to specify a function to take some arbitrary number of generic arguments. You had to have a manual overload for each one of them. So you have to have one for your one function, one argument, then 2, then 3, and so on and so on. In addition to just the code duplication this causes, It also means you have to place some arbitrary upper bound on the number of arguments your function can take. This is actually why SwiftUI result builders are limited to 10 views, because they have to draw the line somewhere. They drew it at 10. Parameter packs, you can now specify just some number of generic arguments and the compiler will just figure it out for you. This is probably going to be something mostly useful for library authors, but it's a great addition nonetheless. Decheng.
Thanks, James. Yeah, let's talk about some new features in the new Xcode. With space? Yeah, the first feature set into the new Xcode is it has smarter code completion. Now the Xcode can set you most frequent used code, and it also detects all the surrounding codes around your cursor, and it prompts you the most accurate result. And also, it's a very handy feature. Remember, we used to use assets for managing the image and the color, but we need to use like string for matching. Now this has changed. We can use enum for that. The Xcode gonna auto-complete for you if you start typing. And also we got a new feature for localization. So if your app supports multi-language, it used to be one language in one file, but now that got centralized. Now you get one file, as seen in the picture, with all the languages, which become super handy. And also we got real-time documentation preview. So if you have a class or a struct with documentations, you can just write the documentation and you can preview on the right panel without any delay. Also, as James mentioned, the new Xcode fully support macro, which is the new thing. You can expand macro by using the new Xcode, and you can set a breakpoint to debug it. Also, we have a new thing called preview. The preview is similar to the SwiftUI one, but it was powered by the new macro syntax. So get shorter syntax, it can preview UIKit and widgets with other enhancements. It also has some small but handy feature like bookmark. You can bookmark your favorite code and you can go back to it later. Also, it has better Git support. So you can just edit your Git commit from Xcode without need to go into other tools. And also, it has great enhancements in testing. It can generate a very nice looking report, like shown in the picture. And you can see which task is failing the most and which ones need some kind of rewriting. Also, for UI tests, there's also improvements. Now you can reply your failing UI test by dragging a progress bar, and you can see what happens when it's failing. This is very handy. Also, OS logging has some native UI support, so if you log stuff with OS logging, it says different background color, and also you can set the tags for it, and you can filter it later. Also has some support like notarizing, signing, and privacy report. Also, there's a big improvement for Xcode, and you can just distribute your app through Xcode Cloud to the testers. There's a new buttons in Xcode Cloud, so you can just tap it and you click it, it will distribute to the test fly and even to the production. Okay, there's some also new features for UIKit. I don't think it's a big year for UIKit and SwiftUI because Apple put a lot of effort into the Vision Pro, but we still go through it. Okay, the first big thing is UIKit now works with preview. This is a very exciting feature, and it turned out UIKit supports preview. Apple didn't do it because Apple wants us to use SwiftUI, but now it's all support. As another big feature is there's a new function inside the view controller's lifecycle. It's called view is appearing. So why it needs a view is appearing is because it will be at after view will appear, but before view did appear. So this is a place if you want to make your view set up ready before view did appear, and within the same transaction with the view will appear, you can edit it here. Yeah, it's This is kind of very a big change in this year. And also you can define your custom traits. So the traits is a thing like you said, light, dark, and dark mode inside UIKit. And now you can use the API to create your own traits, and you can use it for your own customization. Also, SF symbol got animation support. You can animate a SF symbol, and the animation looks pretty fancy. Is that another small updates for empty state? So there's an API called UI content unavailable configuration.empty. It's for some pages like you search something but the result is empty, or some progressing page. If you ever have this page, it's worth check this API out. Also some small improvements like dynamic line height for different languages. Also you can set locale for UI labels. And this feature in UI page control, like in that picture. Now you can set progress for UI page control. So if you want the user to know it's scrolling, and you want to know the time of the image that will stay on the page, you can use the progress. And also very nice, a small but nice feature is the status bar can adjust itself. The status bar used to be very tricky to set because sometimes your background is dark, sometimes it's light. But now if you set it to default, it will just read behind it and adjust itself, which is quite good. Also, the UI image supports HDR image. So there's a toggle there, you can set it up and you can display HDR image in your app. Other small enhancements like scrolling view and better text displaying and editing. Okay, let's come to the SwiftUI. There's some nice feature in this is SwiftUI. The first thing is spiritual computing. This is for the Vision Pro. And yeah, I think SwiftUI will be the recommended to develop any Vision Pro app. And there's some new APIs for watchOS 10. MapKit, charts, table gets brand new enhancements. And you got a new subscription view. So if your app provides in-app purchase, it's worth checking this API out. And also, I'll cover later, there's a new thing called SwiftData. And SwiftUI works perfectly with SwiftData. The last thing is in SwiftUI animation, the keyframes is supported. It used to be very tricky to build any complex animation like chain animations in SwiftUI, but now it supports keyframes. So in a picture, you can define different stage of your animation, and we will just run it for you. Cool. And there's a new thing called SwiftData. So now when I first saw it, I thought, oh, SwiftData is that core data? Change the name? No. It's a different thing. SwiftData is not core data. It's a new framework for persisting data using declarative code. So how declarative it is? It's just use macro for all those things. For example, if you want to use this framework, the first thing you do is just mark your class as model. Then you set up a relationship. Then you initialize model containers. And you can just use that query or environment to fetch stuff. It's just automatically does for you. And the thing is, this framework is available from iOS 17, so there's no rush to migrate. Okay, so I hand over to James for talking about the new one more thing.
One more thing. All right, of course, Vision Pro headset, that's kind of the big headlining, everyone has heard about this at this point. So this is powered, so it's the new VR/AR headset from Apple, the much rumored one. So this is powered by it's an M2 processor to run the operating system and all your apps, and then a special R1 SoC just for doing real-time stuff with all your sensors. And there is a lot of sensors. The front of the device is just covered in cameras pointing up, down, several LiDAR sensors, IR blasters, plus the screen on the front so that people on the outside can see your eyes. It's a VR headset in the sense that it fully encloses your vision and uses screens to completely control what you see. But it really feels like Apple's pitching this as an AR device first. Like all your experiences start in AR using the cameras to pass through. And that seemed to be like a lot of what the demos they were showing off was people using this and running your apps in an AR-like environment. Uses eye tracking and gestures for all your input. No wands like competing headsets. But all this technology does come at a cost. $3,500 US, and God knows how many dollar dues that will end up being. Unfortunately, we don't have access to the SDKs yet until later this month, apparently. So the headset can run multiple different kinds of experiences, can run just regular old iPhone and iPadOS apps natively. Can also run special apps written for the headset. They can be floating 2D windows in your VR environment. They can have 3D elements as part of these windows, or they can be fully 3D immersive environments. For building this, you can use UIKit and SwiftUI for building your main UI. For building the more 3D elements, you're going to be using things like RealityKit and ARKit, which have existed for some time. And Apple's also worked closely with Unity to allow to use Unity to build fully 3D immersive games and experiences. It seems like SwiftUI is really what they're pushing for this. UIKit is supported, but it seems to be mostly as a legacy thing, and you really should be using SwiftUI. Now, obviously, this price, it's perhaps not going to be a massive consumer hit, but from everyone who's tried it, this is just... It seems to be something special. People are describing it as, like, this is the future. And yeah, personally, I'm very excited to get to try it, hopefully sometime soon. So just the last quick thing, obviously we're all going to watch things like what's new in SwiftUI, what's new in UIKit, what's new in Swift. We're all going to watch those main sessions, but there's a lot of great sessions that you might otherwise miss, and these are just a handful I think are worth your time. So we've got Discover Observation in SwiftUI, which is going over the new @observable macro, and how they've changed how the SwiftUI view diffing stuff works. Really great session there, kind of going over how the view builder decides which views to rebuild. Design in SwiftUI is kind of a pitch aimed more at designers, saying that they can and should be using SwiftUI themselves to build prototypes, as opposed to tools like Figma and Sketch. Explore SwiftUI animation. It goes over some of the new APIs, of course, but a lot of it is also just going over how animations work in SwiftUI, how it decides which data to animate, how it interpolates between everything, how animation transactions work. It's a really good, lots of little details in there. Analyze hangs with instruments is kind of going through how to use multiple different instruments to analyze some hangs in your app, and kind of showing you how to use multiple different instruments together to find issues. And then last, demystify SwiftUI performance is kind of going through kind of some more of the internal details of how SwiftUI updates itself, how it decides which views to rebuild, and kind of lots of little tips on how to increase the performance and find places where you're mistakenly making a view rebuild itself 1,000 times a minute. If you're only going to watch one, demystify SwiftUI is the one to watch. I think that's pretty much it for us.